Do you find yourself longing for the apocalypse? I did. I was looking for a reason to live. Hi. Are you feeling tired, irritable, stressed out? Well, you might consider nature.
From the people that brought you Getting Outside comes prescription strength Nature, a non-harmful medication shown to relieve the crippling symptoms of modern life.
Nature's recommended for humans of all ages, and it's great for pets too.
Nature can reduce cynicism, meaninglessness, anal retentiveness, and murderous rage. In clinical studies, Nature is proven to decrease work-induced catatonia.
Caution. Nature may cause you to slow down, quit your job, or seriously consider what the you're doing with your life.
If you are overly cynical, jaded, or emotionally numb, you may need to increase your dose of Nature. Do you have trouble being even mildly uncomfortable? Nature may not be right for you. Side effects may include spontaneous euphoria, taking yourself less seriously, and being in a good mood for no apparent reason.
So ask your doctor if nature is right for you.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Okay, thanks for the video. Welcome to the last keynote session of the 2021 ISST conference. I hope you enjoyed the conference thus far. I'm Weiwei Mo, an assistant professor of environmental engineering at the University of New Hampshire. It is my honor to introduce our last keynote speaker, Dr. David Hart. Dr. Hart is a professor of biology and ecology and is a founding director of the Senator George Mitchell Center for Sustainability Solutions at the University of Maine. He is also the director of Maine Water Resources Research Institute. Dr. Hart has conducted a wide range of sustainability research related to water resources, agriculture, municipal planning, renewable energy, materials management, as well as community and economic development. He has served as a science advisor to government, the private sector, and NGOs, and developed innovative programs to address pressing issues at the intersection of environment, society, and the economy. Dr. Hart is dedicated to growing the capacity of universities to conduct stakeholder-engaged, solution-driven, and interdisciplinary research. With funding from many different sources, the Mitchell Center has engaged more than 200 faculty and 600 students from 17 different universities, representing the natural and social sciences, engineering, design, and the humanities to conduct this kind of research. On a personal note, I'm very lucky to have a chance to work with David on several projects over the past several years. David has been an amazing mentor to me, and I'm constantly inspired by his vision and approach to sustainability research, his enthusiasm in building interdisciplinary research teams, and his commitment in linking knowledge with action. With that, I'm going to hand over the stage to David.
Thank you, Weiwei. But let me just start by saying that Weiwei thinks I'm an okay mentor. I think she's a great colleague, and I've learned as much from her as she's learned. If she's learned something from me, I'm pretty sure I've learned more from her. So that's the way great collaborations go, and you'll see a little bit more about that. So first, let me just thank everybody for being around this late in the day, regardless of exactly where you are in the world, but it's been a long day of cool talks. I'm going to be talking about this subject of community-engaged sustainability research. I've had the good fortune of working with a lot of wonderful colleagues. Weiwei's one of them, but there's a few more, as you can see from the number on this slide. And I'm going to tell you mostly some stories about what we're learning as we try to do this important work. So I don't need to tell you that sustainability challenges are complicated, right? They require this kind of ability to pull together thoughts about the goals, the values, the knowledge that we need, and depending on who you ask, you get very different views of all of that. Perhaps then it's no surprise that these are hard problems to solve. In fact, if you bumped into the literature, which I decided not to say much about today, about wicked problems, for example, which are apparently so complicated that we can't even agree on how to define the problem, let alone how to solve it. In fact, most wicked problems are thought of as not being soluble. In fact, it's a question of whether you can manage them better or worse. Why is that? We could all make a long list of reasons. This is my short list, and I bet yours are just as good. But obviously, they have a lot of moving parts, and for each part, there's a state, a dynamics, and interactions with other parts, and huge uncertainty about every facet of that. I'm trained as an ecologist and environmental scientist, so I thought I knew some things when I got a PhD or after I worked in this field for a long time about the biophysical parts. I think the human dimensions are even more complicated than the parts I'm supposed to know about, which I don't understand nearly well enough. And especially the part about if we're going to solve these problems, again, solving in quotes perhaps, we actually need to change individual and institutional behavior. I don't think we know very much about how to do that. Clearly, there's things in this space that aren't just about science. Maybe we can get at perceptions if we work with social psychologists, beliefs and values. There's a lot of other people that have expertise there, but most of them don't call themselves scientists. That's why we work with folks from the humanities. Context really matters, so one-size-fits-all solutions are very unlikely, and there's the whack-a-mole problem. You try to solve this part of it, and another part you make worse. So that's why that's some of the reasons they're hard to solve. So what does that mean? Is there a road to solutions, and what would it look like? Maybe in some perfect future world, there'll be the equivalent of a self-driving car that takes us straight to the right exit for solutions. We're nowhere close to that, and I can tell you in the work that my colleagues and I have done, we've been on some pretty rough roads, and we've hit our share of dead ends. And I don't think we're necessarily really bad at this. I think that's what this work is like. So I'll tell you, we try to be honest with ourselves about what's worked and what hasn't worked, because you can actually learn more from mistakes than you can from successes. So Weiwei mentioned that I've got kind of a mixed background. Let's see. I've worked for a state resources agency for a number of years. I have been a science advisor to all levels of government in the U.S. and some foreign governments. I've been an advisor to Fortune 100 companies. I have worked at being a senior leader of a science-based NGO. I ran an environmental consulting firm as a profit center within that NGO, and I've been at both public and private universities. I'm mostly I think my view of the world comes from all those experiences, but I am going to emphasize my thinking about the role that universities can play in this work, but I hope that there's some generalizable lessons from this. So universities are probably good at a lot of things, but they sure are good at producing new knowledge, right? You could call it scholarship if you want, but they crank that out, and for all sorts of reasons. There are tons of faculty who just think it's really exciting to push back the frontiers of knowledge, even if they don't worry too much about how the knowledge gets used, and that's a perfectly good thing to be doing in civilization. But for people that are cranking out the knowledge with the hopes that it gets used, and I count many people working on sustainability issues as those kinds of people, we probably need to do a little bit of thinking about what happens next. So what? The packets of knowledge go down this assembly line, and they go somewhere, or we hope they go somewhere. Well, there's a metaphor for this by Dave Cash and some of his colleagues, a wonderful guy who's now at University of Massachusetts, Boston. He was in state government in Massachusetts. They talk about the loading dock problem. It's a kind of metaphor because if those boxes held knowledge and rolled off onto some loading dock, what happens next? Well, is there a loading dock? And if so, are there like trucks that society backs up to the loading dock? And what? People pick up the right boxes? If they opened up the boxes, what would be inside? I don't know, like a model, a peer-reviewed paper? Can they read the paper? Can you read the papers of people in fields other than yourselves that are packed with jargon? I can't. So that's some of the knowledge that comes off the assembly line from universities. Did the knowledge arrive in time to be useful? Or are you like me, where you have stakeholders say, hey, we needed that answer 10 years ago, or 1 year ago, or last week? There's a lot of reasons why this knowledge factory kind of thing, we got to think a little bit more carefully about this. And so one of my favorite cartoons lately is this one that says, I bark and I bark, but I never feel like I affect real change. And I got to tell you that I know a lot of faculty at universities, and I count myself among them, that feel like this sometimes. We're trying real hard to help solve problems, and we don't think it's getting us anywhere. And it's not getting society anywhere. Well, or at least it's not getting there fast enough. And I will say that I think there are a lot of sustainability problems that sure look like they might be getting, they're not getting better fast. They might be getting worse, right? Got to be honest. So what do we do differently? Well, this is a really interesting paper. It's actually from a while back, and these two colleagues, Van Kerkhoff and Lebel, and many of their other colleagues have written a lot of wonderful papers, but this is one worth looking at if you haven't seen it before. And what they do is they try to give kind of a gradient of how we, researchers on the right-hand side and practitioners on the left, might collaborate, kind of in quotes. By the way, there's a whole area that's called research practice partnerships that uses this kind of language, but we sometimes talk about linking knowledge with action, and we talk about university community partnerships. So let's just look at a few of these. The bare minimum is this thing that they call trickle down. So researchers do what they do. They publish their papers in academic journals, and practitioners, maybe they go find those academic papers. Have you had conversations lately with practitioners to find out how easy is it for them to even get access to academic papers? I've had people begging me from state government saying, we can't afford, universities are going broke subscribing to journals. State government can't begin to do that. And the publishers aren't making it easy. So that's a pretty limited form of this, and I know a lot of faculty who, when they do it in this style, feel like they have very little evidence their work makes a difference, and that's almost a quote of what they express frustration about. So let's keep going. The next step up is translation. So researchers engage in science communication. Is that like just barking louder or barking clearer? You can get trained in science communication. Is that all it takes, is to drop the jargon? I don't know if that's far enough. So continuing on, at the other end of the spectrum is this idea of really an iterative process of engagement between practitioners and researchers, where probably they both play roles in defining what the problems are, what the information gaps are, what solutions could look like. And believe me, this has to kind of go through many cycles to make much headway. And to make a long story short, the program that I'm involved in, the Mitchell Center for Sustainability Solution, aspires to work at this end of the spectrum. And I'll give you some examples. So, about a while back, the editor of Issues in Science and Technology, which is it's the policy forum of the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, had been paying attention to some of the things we were doing at the Mitchell Center, and he asked if Linda Silka and I would write a story about our work, and this is the story. It came out about a year ago. It's accessible online for free, so if you want to know more or want to hear different parts of the story of what we're learning, you can find it here and in some of the things we cite at the end. And I'm going to tell you some of those stories. So, how can universities help solve sustainability problems? Who knows? It probably at least involves this. We've got to focus on real world problems. Why do we have to work with partners? Because remember that we've got to change individual and institutional behavior. The status quo isn't working, so something's got to change. It's not like universities can make all the changes themselves, right? So unless we're working with government, the private sector, and NGOs and civil society, we're not really connected to many parts of society that have to change. Clearly, we've got to pull together a lot of different ways of knowing and academic disciplines, and you just have to kind of stay on this road to solutions probably for quite a while. So in our work, we tap into a lot of different kind of interdisciplinary expertise, and this is actually only a partial list of the expertise we've used in our projects. This is its own challenge, is how to make this work. I don't know if you've ever had experiences where you tried to create an interdisciplinary team and it didn't kind of fire on all cylinders. That's happened to us too, but we keep working on it. We're getting better at it, and we published a lot of papers on it, but I'm not going to talk about that today. Weiwei mentioned a little bit about the Mitchell Center. I'll just say I wasn't sure what she was going to say, so here's a little bit more. We've been very fortunate to get quite a bit of funding, including from the National Science Foundation, a lot of different faculty from a lot of different fields. We keep adding faculty, a lot of different stakeholder organizations, a lot of students that we've trained or helped train. We've gone from just being at the University of Maine to helping work with a network of universities across New England, not all at the same time necessarily, but still have a lot of those partnerships going, and we're about to launch some new ones. A lot of papers out there about our work. We knew we didn't want to just work on one thing because we were talking to stakeholders who wanted lots of different kinds of help. We do work on natural resource management issues, whether it's about forestry, fisheries, agriculture. We work on municipal planning issues. We work on renewable energy issues. We work on infrastructure issues. We do a lot increasingly on community and economic development. And all of those things are kind of connected in Maine. This is a tiny subset of the kind of partners we work with, but it gives you a sense of the mix. And now I'm to the story part, where I want to talk about some of our projects. Each one's different in terms of the issues we're working on, the partners we have, the team that we've assembled from the University of Maine and the Mitchell Center, and kind of where we are in the process, what we've learned so far, and where we're headed. So this is one we started more than 10 years ago, I guess. You may know, of course, I know there are people from all over the place, but in the part of the world where Maine is, we're close to something called the Bay of Fundy in Canada, in the Maritimes, pretty much. And some of the world's largest tides are in the Bay of Fundy, and because we're part of the Gulf of Maine that's part of that same system, we have really big tides too. Not as big as the Bay of Fundy, but pretty darn big. Let's see, in meters, for sure over 7-meter tides, maybe over 8 meters in Cobscook Bay, which is on the border between Maine and New Brunswick, a province in Canada. Well, people looked at the big tides and said, "Hey, maybe we can develop tidal power in this part of the world, a renewable energy source." You all know why that's something we're going to have to accelerate the development of decarbonization. But this is a relatively new technology in a new place. Lots of questions about not just its technological feasibility, but also is it going to be environmentally benign? Is it going to be socially acceptable? So we put a team of researchers together. You can see what the tidal turbines look like, at least at this stage. They keep being redesigned. And by the way, the picture down with the turbine and some fish, fishermen use these waters and have for generations to catch lobster, to drag for scallops, to get finfish. And they want to know, hey, what? Are you going to just like chop up the fish with this spinning turbine? Obviously, there were a whole bunch of concerns in the community. So remember the expression meeting people where they are, or meeting stakeholders where they are. That's a big part of our work. And so this is in Cobscook Bay. I don't actually know whether, this doesn't look like a lobster boat to me, so maybe this guy drags for scallops. That's Teresa Johnson, who's a social scientist, kind of a human ecologist, who was one of the researchers leading this project, going out and doing an interview to kind of find out what the concerns might be about tidal power development among fishermen, to ask if there's how they use the waters, whether they feel like there are questions that need to be answered before anybody goes ahead with this development, whether maybe the university should be playing roles in this kind of collaboration or learning what might work. And so that's literally meeting stakeholders where they are on their boats. Fortunately, one of the towns we worked in, Eastport, Maine, has a very active working waterfront, a lot of big fishing community. And one of the questions that the research team was trying to figure out is, well, heck, we've got to find a way to connect with all these fishermen. We'd like to know what concerns they have. We'd like to have them come to a community meeting. We don't even know how to do that. Like, are you going to call them on the phone? Probably not. Are you going to put an ad in the paper and hope they see it? What if they don't get the paper? So this team included a guy named Chris Bartlett, a wonderful fellow who works for Maine Sea Grant, knows everybody in Eastport. And even though like the fisheries scientists and the human ecologists were worried about this kind of nightmare of how to connect, Chris said, no problem. I know where they all park their trucks down at the docks, and we can just make a flyer and I'll put it on the front seat of their truck. What's that mean? It means he literally knows these guys. He knows where they park. He knows that their trucks are unlocked, right? He can put the flyer on the front seat. Heck, I've been in Maine communities. It's not just that the truck is unlocked, the keys are on the seat too. So that's a nice thing about Maine. But in any case, Chris has such deep relationships with this community that he made that part of the university stakeholder collaboration quite easy. Of course, you can also ask stakeholders. You can do research, you can do a survey, and ask them how they think this should work. How should we interact with you? And here's a quote. Boots on the ground is the best way. People associated with the project talking directly to people. Just talk directly to people, with people like at coffee shops and bars. That's how information is delivered locally. Talk about straightforward. Now, the part that wasn't straightforward is this team ended up spending a lot of time in bars, and you can't just sit there and drink milk, so you have to drink what everybody else is drinking. And when we went to turn in the receipts for all of that research, NSF wasn't sure why we spent so much time in bars on that project, but obviously we were doing exactly what the stakeholders told us to do. So you can do this kind of work, and you can scale this up. We have a lot of students who've gotten PhDs in fields like communication with.
So it seems like we have lost David. So we're trying to get him back online, but it might take a few minutes. And sorry for the glitch.
Hi everyone. Sorry about the technical glitch here. It's the casualty of doing a virtual conference. Lynn, could you open a podium? And if anybody in our community, we could open a couple of podiums. If anybody in our community would like to do a little sharing about what they have learned and liked about the conference, or anything that they didn't like, this would be a good opportunity for a networking break in the lobby. Sorry, I don't have any of our good vegetarian food that we normally serve, but let's jump on and do a little networking if you'd like. Don't make me call your name out. Anybody want to come up and share? I'm terrible at tap dancing. Don't make me do it.
Hi,
Oh,
Beth.
Chris, you've saved me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for everything you've done and filling in this glitch. I don't know, my first thought is to comment on what we already heard, which I thought was really great of this talk. And I've been thinking about some of these things a lot myself lately out of frustration of making models, and I'm sure people can relate, that seem to only circulate in academic community. So if anybody wants to talk about that, I think we could talk about that. But generally, I think the conference has been really great, and I've seen a lot of great presentations and sent off some networking emails already with some new ideas to connect some projects. So I hope others are as well. And you made me remember that I'm tardy in reviewing all of my posters, but I have started. So.
Oh, good. We're going to do, thank you for that reminder. Because of the late hour, I don't know if you got the notice that we are not going to have our closing happy hour tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern time, because I don't think that many of us will still be happy at 9 o'clock at night. So we're going to schedule that for probably next week. So that gives us time to judge the posters and the student presentation. So,
Oh, great.
So you've got a little extra time, Chris. Don't
Yeah,
stress.
and also a great idea to spread out so we can maybe, be more happy to have that time together and bring a beverage.
I think I'm going to be happy on my pillow at 9 o'clock tonight.
For sure. Yeah, it's
Oh, and
we
I
have had people in different locations, so I hope that, anyway, accommodating time zones.
Right. And I so enjoyed the panel discussion yesterday. That was amazing. What an inspiring group of panelists that you and Amy got together. That was great.
Yeah, it was nice to speak with some of, I've talked to Brianna a lot and met Shakira a couple times, and yeah.
Yeah, I checked out Shakira's organization too that she started. Is Shakira with us? I'd love for her to get up and talk about that. I don't see her.
But it does look really cool. It's called BioGals for anyone who's interested. And I was thinking to myself about, I could build that into some future budgets,
right.
For all of us who write proposals. So it looks like a great program.
Yeah, everyone check out BioGals. Shakira Hobbs started that organization. Share it with us. That'd be great, Chris.
Yeah, just stick that in the chat. Hopefully that got through. Brianna got it up there.
There's a question. Whoever's asking the question, jump up to the podium with us.
Yeah. It's only 20 of us. It's a friendly environment.
Right. Oh, I thought I could bring that person up. Oh, maybe they're coming. All right. I see Susan Clark on, or I saw her before. Susan. I want to thank her so much. She and Matt Eckelman did a good job helping us find sponsors, and we were able to keep the cost of this conference low with the help of sponsorships. And Susan secured a sponsorship from the National Science Foundation. Also, Mike Chester and his Meta Center at ASU gave us a nice sponsorship, so we could fund 30 student registrations. So we put it out for students, junior faculty, and anyone facing a financial hardship. We had some people in India who have been affected by the COVID-19 virus, and they took advantage of that. So really want to thank our sponsors for helping us out, and encourage more if any of you have connections to help us continue doing this work.
I was thinking that I've been coming to this conference for surely over 10 years, maybe not every year, but many times. I definitely wouldn't have made it without this conference does a really nice job of getting support for students usually, and I've benefited in the past, and I'm glad that continues.
Well, we support you so you can continue doing your great work. Okay, everybody. It looks like we are not having any luck getting David back. Weiwei, maybe we'll bring Weiwei back and see if we can facilitate any kind of conversation about David's work.
So I would suggest maybe we give it like 3 or 4 more minutes, and if we're not getting David back, maybe we'll just have to end the session. What do you think?
Well, can I ask you this, Weiwei? As you're an engineer by training, right? And you've been working with David for a while. I was going to ask you anyway, and it might be nice to hear about the work that you've been doing with him, because I'm really curious. Do you have a project that you work on? Is that okay? Are you busy with the background, or is that?
So David and I have been involved in 2 different projects, but they both are related to dam management. So For that project, we're looking at how we can manage dams from a systems perspective. Instead of just looking at individual dams, you would rather look at the entire basin. And then oftentimes, if you do that kind of management, you can maximize multiple objectives, not only maybe helping with the hydropower generation, but also reducing the fish kills and also maybe minimizing the project costs as well. But the problem is when you needed to look at the river from a whole kind of basin scale, oftentimes that will need coordination among different stakeholders, and the dams might be located under different jurisdictions, and there will be a variety of different stakeholder interests when it comes to the dam management. So there's a lot of kind of conflicts that can come up with this kind of solution, with this kind of management. And we need, so for those projects we have been involved in, we're mainly, on one side, we're trying to understand what are the environmental, economic, and the societal trade-offs when you look at, when you manage the dams from a systems perspective. And then on another side, we wanted to provide toolkits for people to use, so then they can really gain understanding from a different perspective, and then try to facilitate consensus-based decision making, and then facilitate the use of the scientific findings in the real dam management. So yeah, so my postdoc Hong, who's also here, she has really been like leading a major part of this work, which is developing a model which can simulate the environmental, economic, societal trade-offs when we manage dams from a basin scale. And then we applied the model in stakeholder role play negotiation workshops. With that is a collaboration with my colleague Kat Ashcroft here at University of New Hampshire. So essentially, we designed a role play game. We first interviewed stakeholders to understand what kind of key interests and constraints are there related to dam decision making. Then we tried to design a kind of a game with a hypothetical scenario where like something, a notice of deficiency came up and people have to deal with it, and people have to negotiate with each other to come up with a solution. So then we bring together the real stakeholders, and they first play their own role to familiarize with the game as well as to evaluate the game. And then they play each other's role. They play a different role than what they usually do. And then they have to kind of like renegotiate, and then using the model as a kind of a scientific backup, and to come up with innovative kind of policy solutions for the problem. So,
it's so cool. I want to read everything you've written, and I want to invite you to talk to some of the research groups I'm in. That's so awesome. Thank you for sharing.
thank you.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, happy
really
to talk
cool.
more.
Yeah, I'll be in touch 100%. Anybody else excited to talk about all this? I know some of you think about it. Like, I see you out there. But anyway, yeah, great stuff. Thank you.
Who hasn't been on the podium yet this week?
Ooh,
Let's get you up here.
Let's see if there's anybody I know, my students here.
Okay, call them up.
I don't see them. They've been in a lot of attendance, though. Well, I won't call Andrew out, but I know Andrew thinks about these things. Storytelling, gaming, I mean, perfect. Yeah, sounds like fun classroom stuff, too. Yeah, I'll be in touch.
Yeah, exactly. We did develop a teaching packet for that game. It's it's available through the UNH Scholars repository. So it's open source. I can share the link.
Yeah, share the link.
Yeah, and it can be, it should be able to be directly applied in classrooms.
Yeah, at ACLCA last year, Andrew Berardi, Justin Richter, who's not here anymore, Jenny Maldonado, and Eduardo, I can't remember his last name right now, did a special session on and an activity on trying to build consensus around social LCA metrics. I've used that in the class sometimes too. But yeah, I love this idea of negotiating about what's important and linking it to modeling. It's really cool.
Andrew's in the audience.
I know.
Andrew, speak up.
It's like, I won't do it.
Oh,
Hi.
yay. Hi, Andrew.
I've been called out,
Pressured
so I
you
might as well come up.
You might as well. I was just thinking about your storytelling presentation the other day, right? And I'm sure you think about these things, and playing games is kind of similar.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, it's. I definitely see a lot of potential for overlap between gamification and sustainability, and in the context of using narratives, because I mean, that's a lot of what makes modern games compelling is the stories they tell, more so than anything else. Because let's be honest, there's not much in way of innovation in gameplay, so just have to tell interesting stories. But I definitely think there's room for integrating that into sustainability education.
Yeah.
In the words of our former chairman, Tom Seeger, he was big on the whole storytelling model. So I love that. You know, as a non-scientist, probably the only non-scientist here, I definitely learn more through stories than from data. So I love that concept.
That was something influential for me for the storytelling too, was his advice. And anyone who's had him as an advisor has had the shark attack speech. This reference to the Jaws trailer for the original Jaws movie. It starts out as kind of a nature documentary feeling to it, he said. And you're expecting it just to be another movie about the ocean, but all of a sudden it's ominous and the shark attacks, and that's when you have people hooked. So he took from that the idea that you start where people are familiar, what they're comfortable with, and then you have to have your shark attack, some sort of twist or hook that gets them really interested and realizing that it's not just another one of the same thing.
Yeah,
A
that's
good
really good
example.
advice.
I've known Tom all this time. I've never heard the shark story.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, he liked to tell that one to me at least.
For presentations or like just, yeah, that's good advice. It makes me think. It's really good.
For like papers too. But.
Yeah, it's wise.
All right. Well, I hate to give up on David. What do you think, Weiwei? I know he was having internet issues earlier, so.
It looks like he's in the participants list to me, but yeah.
What was that, Andrew?
I think I see him in the participants list, but
yeah,
join.
I think that's a frozen picture from before.
Right.
We're learning so much about virtual conferencing, and I'll tell you from a year ago when my world of live events turned to virtual, the technology has come so far than it was a year ago. So it's pretty amazing how we've been resilient to come up with this new technology. But there's still gotchas here and there. And this is one. So gotcha. We lost signal. anyways, if anybody else would like to share, now's your chance. Otherwise, we'll all take a short break, and please come back in 40 minutes for our next round of sessions. Again, we really want to support those speakers who are speaking later this evening, especially you guys in the Western time zones, Andrew. And Chris, you're in the West too, right?
No, I'm on the East Coast now.
Oh, you're
I was in Missouri for a while, but now I'm in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. You moved, I remember.
I'll pop in and out though, for sure. There's
All
some
right.
good talks, so.
I'm so sorry, everyone.
We learned a lot, and I've
Not
learned
your
from
fault.
you. So, yeah.
We appreciate you getting David for us. We can
Yes.
hopefully we can bring him to Pittsburgh next year. I affirm that we will be live, and I think he would be just a great person to personally network with in Pittsburgh. So let's plan on bringing him to Pittsburgh next year.
So, Pittsburgh. Yeah, I was going to ask, but no, that's great. That's going to be Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's where we were supposed to be in 2020
Yeah.
and 2021. So we will be there in 2022.
Excellent.
It's the city of my birth, and
Yes.
I'm looking forward to being there. Tom Seeger
Cool.
was born there too, so
Wow,
we didn't
that's so
know each
cool.
other. But
I love living there, so I'm so excited.
great.
I'm close. Yes. The Penn State crew for sure.
Great. All right, everyone, enjoy a break. Get some dinner, lunch, cocktail, whatever you want, and come back and see us in 38 minutes.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.